I really think responses to failure that's the key. It's not failure itself. Failure is going to happen. 100% guaranteed failure will happen.
I'm interested in success that comes from working on myself and becoming a better person.
Hello everyone, this is our first episode of Redefining Success. And very exciting. We have Josh Radnor, actor, writer, and director Josh Radnor, best known for his role in How I Met Your Mother, and Ben Lee, who's written some of the catchiest hits of the last 20 years. I've had Catch My Disease, is that it?
Yeah.
All day I've had it in my head. Anyways, so happy to have you on and so honored that you happen to be our first guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So I noticed just by watching a few interviews, you're very much, deep thinkers. I mean, I just looked on your website, Ben Lee, where you say, you began your career in the music industry hungry for fame, attention, and now you're continuing for different reasons. Josh, I've watched your Ink Talk, where you talk about the lessons you've learned through fame, and I had no idea that you guys had such profound insights to share with everyone. And I feel like the world doesn't know as much about that side of you. Let's start off with your new musical endeavor. I want to know, how did it all come about? How did you guys come together?
Well, we connected initially through How I Met Your Mother. The creator of the show had wanted to use a song of mine, so he invited me down to the set, and we met then. But we were friends for 10 years then before we made any music together. So it was really just based in, like you said, having a shared value system maybe, or way of thinking about things, or compatibility in the differences too,
It really was more like we were hanging out anyway, so why don't we write some songs and see if we can take some of what we talk about a lot of times in terms of growing up, letting go of certain youthful ideas that we were certain about that are becoming less, we're becoming less certain about, spirituality, philosophy, theology, all these different things that we just naturally wanted to talk about with each other. I think there was a feeling like, hey, maybe there would be some strange alchemy if we wrote songs together. I thought it would be I would be more the lyrical driver and Ben would be more music, and it hasn't worked out that way. We really just sit down and write songs together, and I'm now playing guitar, and just when to write songs together, something happens. We leave with something that we're excited about.
I was a lonely man with an empty hand, and I wanted it filled with treasure. So I left, spent a life hoarding diamonds, silver and gold upon my sleeves. Yes, I had the world's biggest necklace, but one day found I couldn't breathe. I'm gonna hold it with you. Now we're standing at the doorstep of truth.
Where does the inspiration come from? Because I heard some of the lyrics, and I mean they're pretty deep, profound, spiritually based.
I think Ben and I, and he can follow this up if he wants to do it, disagree with me, but I think we had a great gift on some level spiritually, which is that we achieved some success pretty young, some worldly success. And I think that's a good thing to happen, because the benefit of that is it doesn't solve all your problems, and it actually brings on a host of new problems that you weren't anticipating. So because you kind of get that out of the way a little earlier, if you're hungry to actually find some sort of peace or satisfaction in your life, you can get down to the business of really asking yourself the big questions about how you do that. Looking at not just what the flavor of the month idea is about how we be happy in a free market economy, but really looking at some of the perennial traditions. What have people been saying for thousands of years? And one of the things is, sensory pleasures or material pleasures, they're not sustainable. And in fact, they're kind of an illusion. And that if we pin our happiness on them, we're going to suffer. So I think we both found that success or hit songs or hit television shows, there wasn't sustainable happiness at the other end of those.
Yeah. And I'd also say I didn't know Josh as a little guy, but I'm imagining he was kind of like me. Like I was the guy at school. Like I went to a Jewish day school, and we go to a camp where you're meant to talk about, what is the meaning of life? And you're meant to, but I was the one who actually wanted to do that.
Yeah, I was the same.
Like my friends, yeah, we get to go away and sneak into the girls' rooms, which I like doing too. But it was, I loved like staying up late and like talking about ideas and trying to understand like what is this thing that we're in. I think at the end of the day, like spirituality can start sounding very complicated when it's really just like human beings going, what is this thing that we're in and how do we best navigate around it? So it's like natural.
Yeah, like what's the purpose of it all? I mean, part of my journey was that, I grew up where my father declared bankruptcy twice, didn't have a lot of money, grew up in poverty. I thought that once I get the money, the success, the dollars in the bank account where I can provide for my family, once I build the business, once I'm there, I'm going to be happy. And I did that, and I went there and I made it. And when I got there, I felt emptier than ever before. I was more insecure than I ever was.
Yeah, there is that thing of like you bring yourself there, and if you were dissatisfied before, you're dissatisfied there. But I also think the reason I felt, and I heard you say you were actually more in greater suffering on the other side of the success, is because in some ways I think hope or fantasy about what success will be like is a bit of a narcotic. It can kind of soothe you in a fantasy way. You'll think about, you know what, today was hard, but one day I'm going to be famous or successful. And then you get there and you no longer have the soothing of that illusion, that hope that had fueled you is suddenly eradicated. So it's almost like a double sadness.
Without cutting to the end of your discussion of this, what is redefining success, I think we don't want to discount providing for your family, making features, making records from success, because that can be part of success, Yeah. But I think it's more about what we include in success.
Yeah.
And that our new vision of success should include happiness. Right. It should include being able to relax, being healthy, being able to eat well, sleep well, self-esteem. So
community.
None of these things are inherently bad. Like making money is wonderful.
We still write songs and be on TV shows. We haven't stopped doing that. We're not on a mountaintop, But
you make a definition that includes your own wellness, basically.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with what we're doing with Uplifted Life, is we're creating a platform, and we're definitely hoping that we're going to prosper, but doing it from that space of not coming from a space of scarcity and lack and survival. And once I made it, it's going to be like from a space of outpouring. How can we create something that's going to touch the lives of as many people as possible? And you're doing it from a sense of outpouring. And as you outpour, well, if we personally thrive and prosper doing that, then that's amazing. And to enjoy the journey as we're doing it, enjoy the process of creating, enjoying the process of growing and expanding, facing our fears and our insecurities, and wherever that's going to lead us. And that part of that is financial wealth, then that's amazing. And at the same time, when that financial wealth comes in, you're not the same person that at least I'll speak for myself. I'm not the same person that I used to be, that needed that financial wealth to identify with it.
The wealth is the growth and all the trials and tribulations you went through and the person you're becoming as you create what it is you're creating. Sometimes we focus so much on like what it is that we're creating, the thing itself, as opposed to the state of being through which we get to express. And that's what I think touches the heart of somebody else so much more than if you just focus on, the action, the what, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of success I'm personally interested in. Like, I'm interested in success that comes from working on myself and becoming a better person and a bigger person that can touch more people. Like, ultimately, I look at it in terms of like, in the past, I've had success that's felt lucky at times, and I feel like I didn't really own that. It's like winning the lottery or something. Like, you don't know how it happened. But real success that comes from intention, you feel very like in control in a good way. It's like, yeah, I know why I was rewarded, because I gave a lot of myself, and it's like a natural give and take, as opposed to like just entering the lottery over and over with our art or whatever we're doing and going like, fingers crossed, this video might go viral.
Yeah.
Like craziness. Yeah.
But seriously, we want the video to go.
Yeah, but I really hope this video goes viral.
Hopefully.
Hashtag.
But sometimes even like viral, yeah. But sometimes just like if it reaches 50 people, and then you have 2 of those comments that tell you like, oh my god, this had such a profound impact on my life. Who knows how many people they will impact through their state of being? It might be their family or their coworkers. It's like, we don't know, I think, the ripple effect that just, you know, the lives that we touch has. Yeah, even if it's the smallest little thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It could be a podcast. It could be a song that you guys are creating. It could be a TV show. But if that TV show adds a smile to that person's face or helps them lighten up, then you get a sense of meaning and purpose. And that's the currency that you get back at the same time. And imagine being able to create a cultural story where success, you know, is defined that way. You know, but the number of lives that you touch, you know, how many people can you lighten up with whatever it is that you're creating? You know, whether that's a coffee shop or a coffee, and you create it with love and attention, and you bring it to the person, and you know that person's name, and you love what you're doing. That's a success. You know, you are a successful being. You're coming from that. You're coming from deep space of how can I outpour, how can I serve. One of the things I think you mentioned before is collaboration, community, so important. We're working against each other, competition, and I'm successful. I'm going to go get what it is that I want at any cost. And you work so hard to get to where you want to go, where you sacrifice so much because it's all about what can you get, that when you get to the top of the mountaintop, now you have to protect it. So what you thought was actually going to bring you success and freedom and happiness, now you're busy protecting. Yeah. So you're in another prison.
The guy who says, I'll be happy when I have my first $1 million. It's like by the time he gets to his first $1 million, he or she has created a lifestyle that they need $1 million to help sustain.
Yeah.
So anxiety is such that they're just as worried about money with $1 million, if not more, than when they had $50,000.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's true. I mean, the clients that I work with, it's exactly the same thing. You know, they could be worth millions of dollars, but they're still in that same space of scarcity and lack and inner contraction because now they're looking for the next 10 million, or they're comparing themselves to the person who has 100 million, or or keeping that. So very, very cool.
Can I bring up a few of your lyrics that I highlighted that I love? Okay, which one first? Okay. Solutions, they aren't coming from the left or from the right. Like a great sage in, is it Ohio that you said, by the way?
Ojai, OJ.
Oh, okay, because it's written
California.
Online, it's written Ohio. Okay. No. Love will heal this mess. And now my contribution, loving more and speaking less. Let's elaborate on this.
I love that verse. And I think a lot of the journey that we're on with music. I mean, music. We were just talking about this. Like, if you just wanted to write down ideas, you could be a poet or an essayist or an author. When we make songs and write with music, we do it because there's something transcendent about the non-verbal aspects. And I think both of us have kind of been on a journey of how do we take the best that verbal communication has to offer, but also blend it with this non-verbal world of music and rhythm that can say things that are secret, that the human psyche can perceive in very subtle ways, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just around that lyric, though, it's a reference to Krishnamurti, who is a spiritual teacher,
right.
And he lived in Ojai, California for years. And he has a quote that I've always loved. It said something like, essentially that solutions won't be coming from the left or from the right, and only love will save us. So it's kind of a, not so obvious tip of the hat to a person I've read and gotten a lot from. If you wanted the inside baseball on that lyric.
Amazing. Yeah. And then there's another one. I played the smart professor. Yes, I tried it on for size. I'm done with facts and figures. Now I hunger to be wise. Which is, that to me, I relate a lot because on my own path of opening up to personal development, I was so heady about it. And I could speak about it brilliantly and beautifully and make all the sense in the world. But when it came to really embodying it and not keeping it at the head level, that's when it really starts. That's when your life really starts. And you can even get trapped a little bit in an ego, in the sense like, oh, I'm more aware, I'm more conscious than you. not that I would say that, but it's like it can be subtle to just transition from in your head to really being, and that's when the real work, and the challenges and it can get messy, but that's where you really transform. I feel your life experience.
Yeah, I noticed that for me, I found that I used to think that more information and more facts and more just books and things and quotes, I thought it added up to wisdom, and it's not. It's a different thing. You know, wisdom is kind of found in simplicity and quiet, and the other stuff. You can actually, you think you're trying to find some peace, but what you're adding is more noise. Mm. So I think that's what that verse is about.
It become just another way for you to avoid getting quiet. That's what I would do. Oh, but the next book, or just before going to bed, instead of just laying down and closing my eyes, I'll just open a book. I noticed myself getting addicted to books just as much as my phone. That's when I was like, wait a minute, maybe it's time I practice.
Maybe it's time you double down on the phone.
There's a real
yes, thank you.
When you get into this conversation about like psychology and spirituality, and there's a real cultural elitism.
Yes.
That comes from how many books have you read, how many authors, which programs have you done, are you a trained facilitator in this program, are you like life coaches, like it's a whole world of confusion. That, not to say there aren't good skills we can acquire, but there is something about people who have just lived through real things in their life and weathered them and survived them, and there's a calmness in that particular area, maybe not in other areas, and it's very comforting to be around people like that, because you go, they survived it, I can survive it. Exactly. But it's not academic, it's like real life.
Exactly, and to ask them and to know how did they survive it, what changed in their being, or maybe their perspective, or the story they told themselves, like what created that shift where they are on the other side now and they come from a different space.
I also think there's no substitute for experience. Like when I was at NYU in graduate school, I read so many books on like young actors and what do you do and what are auditions like and what's it like talking to a casting director. I just read and read and read and read because I just thought this information will save me. But ultimately, I just had to go on a lot of auditions and a lot of meetings and say the wrong thing and success and have good auditions and bad auditions. I didn't really learn anything from the books. I learned from the doing.
It's really that real life experience of getting your hands messy, going in, face planting, getting back up, learning from that, readjusting. What did I learn from that experience, and making another choice and keep on.
And what was that thing you told me about that successful people view failure as a stop on?
Yeah, successful people don't think of failure as the end of a journey. They think of it as something that happens on the way to success. And it's very interesting that like when you hit a failure, you do have those friends that they go into woe is me and life's not fair, as if it's the end, as if they're not on chapter 3.
Yeah, right. And see, that's the mindset is the problem in this case. Like you got two people, one person failed, the other person failed. One person will say, this is horrible, I failed, I'm never going to amount to anything. And the other person say, well, I'll try again, or maybe I'll learn from it. Yeah. It was just the mindset.
I went out to LA to be with my girlfriend at the time, and I wasn't working much in television at all in New York. And I somehow got cast in a pilot, the lead of a pilot on my very first audition in LA. And I was thrilled, and we shot it, and I thought it went well. And then I got replaced on the show when it went to series. They kept everyone, and they replaced me. They fired me, essentially. And I remember that was a real crossroads moment for me, because the stories that flooded my head were like, all of Hollywood has rejected you. Television has rejected you. No one wants to see your face on a TV screen. Go back to the theater or go to law school. It was a real moment for me where I either could have fled and decided that I had been roundly rejected, or I could say, you know what, I'm going to go back to East and do 2 plays, which I did, and I'm going to head back to LA, and I'm going to get back in those rooms and find a project that's more appropriate for me. And the next year I had my best year ever as an actor, both financially and professionally. So, I really think responses to failure that's the key. It's not failure itself. Failure is going to happen 100%, guaranteed. Failure will happen. It's how do you respond to it?
What's the quote? The quote
from Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
Between stimulus and
response. Between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Yeah. In that space, we get to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, wait, what was his famous book? I've got it.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning. I haven't read it yet. I've got it on my to-do list.
It's there somewhere.
And that book is such a powerful, powerful book. And that quote, I think in those 3 or 4 lines just really, at least to me anyways, in my opinion, gives you the roadmap for life. It's like life is going to happen, stuff is going to happen, and we have the privilege to be able to respond to that. And through our responses, we're going to create our experience.
So then the work is to cultivate that space.
It's to cultivate that space.
And how do we cultivate that space? Then that's when comes, meditation is a tool or just...
Do you guys both practice meditation? Are you both, yeah?
I don't practice anything. Like, I don't have anything I do every day. I have done many practices, but
we actually learned meditation from the same teacher.
Yeah,
that was a weird coincidence. Yeah.
Okay.
But I also am. I've sort of come to realize that even two people using the word meditation might not be talking about the same thing. So I'm aware of a meditative state that sometimes occurs, but I'm not sure it has much to do with sitting and closing your eyes. I think that can maybe is a good practice for it happening.
Right.
But I'm sort of interested in trying to allow for it to happen when it happens, which is more my thought around it.
Oh yeah, some people get into the zone when they play music. You probably know that. Could be while washing the dishes or anything, but as a tool for those who I feel like I need it for now at least to really make the time, because all my priorities would be like everything, work, doing, and I would just it was like, okay, I have to make the time, I have to commit to that, and then probably eventually I'll have enough space in my life where I can bring that space in my everyday actions, basically.
I think there's one of the most powerful things about meditation is it's non-doing. There's no obvious financial benefit to it. It's not like it's almost aggressively swimming upstream of what our culture says we must be doing. More hours in the day means more productivity. So but I think that there's something wonderfully rebellious about having a meditation practice. That said, for about a decade, I did twice daily meditation, and I rarely missed. And I generally meditate in the morning, and I sometimes get an afternoon meditation in, but I can also use meditation as a kind of weapon in my perfectionism, you're not meditating, and I can use it as a reason to get mad at myself.
Or I'm meditating.
I'm so I'm awake, and I'm going to be the best spiritual. I'm going to get one of those spiritual awards at the end of the year at that banquet. So there's traps along the way, spiritual pride, which Ben and I have unpacked. We've had a lot of conversations about that, the temptations of spiritual pride or mystical pride. It's a real landmine along the way. So no matter where you lean, there's traps along the way, I think.
You can definitely get caught up with a spiritual ego, for sure. I know my practice of meditation, I began meditating when I was 13 because I had a speech problem. I would stutter and I couldn't even pronounce my name. And I would just sit in front of the mirror and just breathe in from the nose, out from the mouth, and get the noise that was inside my head just to kind of just come back here, come back to the breath, come back to my lips, focus on the one word that I needed just to get out. And I mean, little did I know that my burden would become my blessing, because that was my beginning of meditation. I didn't really, it wasn't introduced to me as meditation. It was just introduced as speech therapy. It's like, just calm your mind down, breathe from the nose, focus. And I would do that, hours per day in front of the mirror. But that allowed me to settle my mind down. It just almost became like an anchor. When my mind would go into this whirlwind, I'd be able to kind of pull back and say, just come back here. Just come back here. And when life does what life does, because life is going to do what life is going to do, that my practice allows me just to come back, just back here. and how can I respond to what's happening from a much more calm space, compassionate space, big picture space, rather than being dragged into that, chaotic mind chatter, that's going on. So it's changed my life.
I've heard, I was just that thought came into my mind. When a podcast, I think it was you, Josh. I don't know how long ago was that, but you were pondering on the question, like, how can you be both popular and good? And you were really like,
first conversation Ben and I had.
Oh,
yeah.
So where are you at in this discussion now, and how are you?
I don't know. Our record, we just started playing live and recorded the songs and got them out there, and it feels like people are responding to them, and we think they're good. Yeah. And they're getting out there. And I guess I've lessened a little bit in terms of my obsession with popular, because I feel like, I'm about to do a show for NBC, and I'm not the one publicizing that thing. They have a really strong publicity arm. And whether that show works or not, it's going to get to a lot of people, because that's the kind of thing. And I've done other shows or movies that have been really small, and not a lot of people have seen them. The only thing I can control is good, or at least my orientation towards trying to be to do it well. Mm-hmm. The popular thing is a little out of my control, but I do think that the art that is kind of the most impactful is both good and popular. And I'd like to believe that good art rises to the top, and maybe it doesn't always at the moment that it's released, but it now that art lives pretty long. I hope that things, I directed 2 movies that people keep finding, and that's really gratifying.
Yes, I forgot to plug your movies. Liberal Arts, Happy Thank You More, Please.
Yes,
I've seen both. They're amazing. I totally forgot, but hey, if they keep going the interview until the end, they'll know.
Yeah. I have a feeling that most people want to be part of something that works and is successful, however that's defined. I've generally found, for me, I'm not that attached to what that is. I like making enough money to be able to support my family and not stress about money. But I'm kind of not that. Like, the standards keep changing because the culture keeps changing. As a musician, like, we live in an incredibly fragmented cultural landscape now. So popular does not mean what it meant 10 years ago. Like, as an artist, if you sell 100,000 records now, that's a massive success. Whereas 10 years ago, that would have been a moderate success. And I think having a loyal and dedicated follower audience is more important than having the masses peripherally aware of you. So because it keeps changing, because I've lived through so many of these shifts, I realize, like, I have no idea. As long as I'm making enough money to keep doing it and I'm enjoying the things I'm doing, I'm really quite happy at sort of whatever level they're perceived. So for me, it's good, I think. Good is most important, and popular enough is important.
Yeah, that's a good combination.
Anything that supports you from continuing to do what makes you come alive and allows you to be of service, that may
and
look...
it plays the long game. I always think of it as a very long game, a career. Like, I want to be standing on a stage when I'm in my 70s and 80s. And that involves, like, but it's interesting how, did you see, Alina, how, like, you giggled at that moment because it's not part of the way we think of being a musician and artist.
I got excited. That's why I giggled. I was like,
I know,
yes, do it.
Yeah. It's a response because it's an unusual thing for someone to say. I don't know why. Why would it be unusual? I just want to keep doing the thing I love until I die. It makes a lot of sense for me.
It does.
So in that realm, you have to think about sustainability.
Yeah.
If we were to redefine success, what would your little condensed definition of success would be? I'd be curious to find out.
I'd say the opportunity to struggle at what you love, and at the end of the day, have dinner with people you also love.
Love that. Relationships.
Have poutine. I would
come here. We got some here.
I would say the ability to play. You know,
struggle and play. Interesting.
Yeah, which are very similar. They're quite similar because play has struggle in it.
Yeah.
You know, and struggle has play, but they're quite similar. It's interesting. But the ability to develop a life in which play is a dominant force, is whatever has afforded you that is a success.
Love that. Play.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Anything you'd like to say about? I know you guys are going on a tour. Anything
Yeah.
you want to say about that? About your music?
Honestly, you know, I think the best thing you could do is head to. Josh has a mailing list and I have a mailing list.
Okay.
We do not have a combined one,
No.
but mine's at ben-lee.com. People can sign up for news about everything I'm doing. Josh, via your Twitter is probably easier.
Yeah, under my Twitter bio, there's an Instapage sign up for. I do these bi-monthly newsletters, I call them, which we'd love people to sign up for both of those. You can get the record on Spotify or iTunes, or and we're going to keep making music. Yeah. So
and stay in touch.
Stick with us. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
Great
you so
so
much.
All right, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.